Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CoinDrop podcast. This is episode 111, and I am once again alone this week. Mike has picked up a second job and has unfortunately had to step away, but I do have some good news for you guys. I am in the process of potentially vetting a new co-host. So we will be doing a test recording episode early next month, which will not come out to the public side, but it may come out on Patreon. So if you want to hear that test recording, get a feel for the new host, and just kind of catch up and get to know him, probably be more conversational, that episode. The idea there is that it'll be a more of a conversation kind of thing, have him lead some stuff, but that's neither here nor there. We will get into that in the future if everything jibes well. Real quickly here at the top, we do have a Patreon. Make sure you check it out, patreon.com/CoinDropPod, where you can get this podcast a day early, as well as check out exclusive content, get extended content, and a list of upcoming games for the week that seem interesting to us here at CoinDrop. That being said, I do have some corrections as well from last week. I foolishly said Sea of Thieves, I think twice in the last episode. I did the editing on the last audio version and YouTube version, so I hope you guys enjoyed those. But I realized that I said Sea of Thieves, not Skull and Bones, twice. I corrected this in the video on the YouTube side, calling myself an idiot when I did the edit. But for those of you who did not watch the YouTube video, give it a check out. I think I did a good job on the edit there, and I'd appreciate the feedback if you guys liked it. So check it out. Yeah, so I said Skull and Bones. I'm sorry, guys. It's been a weekend. I've been gearing up for going to Norway tomorrow. It's literally Sunday. I'm recording this, and I am alone. And I've been working with my wife to clean up the house, get packed, get our daughter packed, figure out the food situation, because we're going to be in the air for 16 hours. And as a celiac, that's really complicated on navigating food and cross-contamination. So I'm just kind of fried. So I do apologize. This episode, once again, will be shorter. There's nothing I can do about that. We're literally going into Gamescom. I'm recording this 2 days before the start of Gamescom. So news right now is really minimal. Basically what I've got for you is some good stuff. I like last week, I think I provided some good content, but yeah, you decide. Let me know. But tonight I've got some updates from a single player narrative game from Saber Interactive that, funny enough, I kind of mentioned last week. They just put out some information because they are not going to Gamescom, so they won't be there. So they gave us an update on one of their projects we'll be talking about, as well as a new ARPG from Moonbeast Productions, who is comprised of veterans in the industry, including people like, critical to the building blocks of Diablo 1 and 2. So we've got some good content for you guys still. I did try my best to get some good stuff for you tonight. Over on Patreon tonight, we're going to talk about an issue that plagues every gamer who's ever played a video game ever, and talk about an interesting take on a solution for it that I wanted to have a conversation with a co-host, because I think bouncing this off of somebody would be really cool, and we might still do that. I might retouch on this during that Patreon side of our test episode that I'm doing with my potential new co-host, who will be taking over, and we can move forward a little bit more, what's the word I want? Steadily, I guess? Reliably? And not that Mike isn't reliable, but you get what I mean. All right, without any more interruptions, I don't think I have any other housekeeping notes to go over here. As a result of this episode and last episode being shorter, we are going to make sure that we flood you guys with content for PAX, because now we've got 2 short episodes plus a week off, and then we're going into PAX. So that PAX episode, expect honestly probably 2 hours worth of content for that PAX episode, because we're going to have PAX, like I said last week, and we're also going to have Gamescom. So there's going to be a lot of content coming out of next week's episode. So just be aware of that. And, hopefully it's good. I've got some cool stuff in the works. There's something I don't want to announce yet because I'm still waiting to hear back, but I might be landing an interview with someone who's kind of like a personal, I don't want to say hero, but like someone I really look up to, who was very crucial to my personal gaming journey, who's going to be at PAX. And I'm really looking forward to the potential to interview him and talk to him about where the industry is at, what he's working on, how things have been for him and his team as they move forward from their, previous works. It's just, I'm hoping it's going to be a great interview. Honestly, I'm hoping it's going to be a great PAX. It's going to be a great PAX. I'm not even going to have it's going to be fun. So don't miss that episode. You'll probably want to watch that episode. If you usually listen, I would highly recommend going to youtube.com/CoinDropVods. That's VODS, Victor, Oscar, Delta, Sierra, and checking out the content there, because we're going to have video interviews that we're going to cut into that. It's going to be a big video, but there's going to be a ton of content for you guys. So please check it out over there at youtube.com. Subscribe if you haven't. It really helps us a lot. We're getting more subscribers, which is great, but more views, more people talking is what's going to help propel us into the future. So if you can find it in you to open the cesspool that is YouTube and Facebook and all those other social places, please consider following us if you haven't already. And tell your friends. Let them know we're out here doing, trying to give a more grounded view of what's going on in the industry from the perspective of gamers, not just journalists. Not to say that all journalists are just journalists, but, we're gamers first, right? So, all right, let's jump into this. So, last week we talked about Ferocious, a game that I mentioned that I wish I would have known about sooner, and how I was talking about how it was going to hold me over until Jurassic Park Survive. Well, funny enough, we're talking about Jurassic Park Survive tonight. Earlier in the week, Saber Interactive put out a dev blog. They told us kind of what's going on with the game, where they're at, and they gave us a little bit of information that we didn't previously have. First of all, they've launched a Steam page, and you can now wishlist the game on Steam, which previously, up until this blog, I don't think you could. I remember looking for it a couple of times and I didn't see one, so now it's there. If it was there earlier, I'm mistaken. But the game is going to be set literally one day after the end of the original Jurassic Park movie, which I know they said they were basing it, the game was taking place directly after the movie, but this is like directly after the movie. So because of that, the team, who is comprised of massive fans of the original Jurassic Park, right? Like people who, like you and I, grew up watching the original movies and the groundbreaking visual effects that they did in the first Jurassic Park, and how amazing that film was. And the fact that Samuel Jackson plays a bit part in it, which is hilarious to me. Such a big name actor, and he's kind of just there in the background. It's very funny, but it is that one day after one day after the end of the movie. And for those of you who haven't heard of this title yet, I guess you've been under a rock. It is a single-player, first-person narrative story. So it's not a survival game. It's not one of the city park builder games that we see all too often. It's a proper Jurassic Park game that we have wanted. I bet I personally have wanted since SNES days with the old Jurassic Park game that was incredibly hard. They went to a level of detail that is to be commended for this project. They literally watched the movie when they were building the game, while they're building the game, and go room by room, scene by scene, to put every item that you saw in the movie exactly where it was in the movie. That's pretty fucking cool to be able to walk into the engine control room and know that everything is exactly, if it was seen in the movie, it is there exactly as it was, because it would be a day later, right? Nothing has changed in those 24 hours. Anything that has would be minor, right? So very cool that they have gone to that level of detail. They've even gone to look at actual props from the movie and get super hands-on to get as accurate to a lot of those important props as possible to make it feel like you're there. And I'm juiced, man. I'm so cool. I'm so cool. What the fuck? It's so cool. Like I said, man, my brain is fried. I don't know what you guys want from me. I'm doing my best here. Just going over my notes here. I'm sorry. fill in the dead air here. So you will be going to a lot of the areas that we saw in the movie, right? You know, you're going to go to the cloning labs, all those places, the kitchens, of course. Yeah, you get to do that scene as Maya, which is really awesome. There's going to be a ton of stuff that we saw in the movies that are going to be in the game. That being said, there's going to be a ton of stuff in the game that we only kind of were told was in the movie or was hinted at or was in the background that we never got to see. They specifically call out a hotel you're going to go to in this game that is still under construction. Obviously, it's been abandoned now, but you're going to go to this hotel that they were building because, remember, Jurassic Park was supposed to be a resort, like Disneyland, which I don't know who thought that was a good idea. I guess it's like a zoo, but like, I don't know, man. The more I think about Jurassic Park, the more I'm like, who thought this was a financially intelligent and morally... I guess that was, Goldberg's whole thing, though, or Goldman's whole thing, though, was like, you didn't bother to stop and ask whether or not you should. You just asked if you could. So, speaking of Maya, she was personally recruited to be like one of the main engine scientists, geneticists for this game. That's the purpose of her character, though I don't know if she's a character that's at all mentioned in the movie at any point. It would be interesting going back and watching it and seeing if they make any mention to her, because, like, for example, Star Wars Rogue One, there's a scene in that movie where they actually call out for General Syndulla in that, which, for those of you who are hardcore nerds like me, General Syndulla is the captain from Marvel. Fucking Christ, dude. My brain is so fucking done. She's the captain from Star Wars Rebels, which was like an animated series that followed up Clone Wars, but her character came into existence because of that line. Like, she didn't exist prior to Rogue One, and then they're just like, hey, this is a cool idea. Let's make a show and make General Syndulla like... So, it would be interesting if they took a name like that, is basically what I'm getting at, from original Jurassic Park, where maybe there's a reference to Maya at some point, and they, boom, pull her in, make her the main character for the game. That's what I'm trying to get at here. Stupid comment. Ignore me. Well, don't ignore me. You're listening to the podcast. The team that Saber put together for this game are all long-term fans of Jurassic Park, like anybody who's going to play it. So they want to do the game right. They're putting a huge focus on the dinosaurs because obviously they are front and center. There's a lot of work going into the animations, the look, the textures, the light filters, all of it to make everything, but especially the dinosaurs, look the way we expect them and want them to. So very cool. That being said, again, they will not be at Gamescom this year, so that's kind of why they put out this devlog, to kind of show what their progress is, where they're at. And they have a Steam page, so go wishlist it. Why wouldn't you? It looks awesome. Do it. Did you do it? All right, we're moving on. Next up, Moonbeast Productions is a small but very veteran-packed development studio. This team has veterans from a ton of ARPGs. They have put together Diablo, Diablo 2, Torchlight, what was it? London something another? Hang on. Hellgate London, that's what it was. Torchlight 2, even a veteran from Diablo 4. Hit or miss as that game is. But this team is working on a new ARPG, and it is so new that it doesn't have a name yet. And the only reason we know about it is because Rhykker, who is a huge name in ARPGs, got to play it and did a video on it, and I watched it. It is very, 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 very early footage, to the point where, like, pre-alpha, I guess is the best way to say it. It's surprisingly complete for as early in development as it is I guess what I should say. But this one stands out among other ARPGs in a very interesting way that I haven't personally decided whether or not I like or not yet, I guess. Yeah. So the world is a voxel-based world that has fully destructible environments. And that fact about it alone seems really strange to me because ARPG and voxel world that's fully destructible don't feel like they mesh well. But from what Rhykker shows in his gameplay, it actually looks pretty interesting. Very unique, for sure. Definitely something we haven't seen in ARPGs before. And it's procedurally generated to the point where the maps will always have all the same elements. It's more just a different way that they combine them. So the layout will be different. But it's also an open world ARPG that's a voxel-based game. And I have to wonder if there's actually going to be a campaign here, because from what it seems like, it doesn't seem like there is. From like what's been shown, what's been talked about, there's quests. They talk about quests, but the quests are world events kind of thing. I get the feeling of like Bungie, Destiny style run around, world event happens kind of thing, and you partake in that. Like that's the feel I get. Now, that being said, it is a single player game as well as a co-op game and a multiplayer online game. But you can host your own server locally, personally. So you've got your version of the game, which is your world that you've procedurally generated. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm curious to see where they go with it. There's no microtransactions. This team, they hate it. They don't do microtransactions. The biggest reason I think I've got hope or interest or trust, I guess, in this game is when I say Moonbeast has big names, I mean they've got really crucial people to Diablo in this, including Phil Schenk, who, if you guys didn't play Diablo 2, is kind of the king of Diablo 2. I mean, the guy was instrumental in a lot of the work to the point where he got immortalized in Diablo 2 as Schenk the Overseer, or Schenk the Overseer in Act 5, or 6, excuse me, Act 6, which is, the last act, the expansion act, whatever. He's on this team in a big way. So like he was super critical in building Diablo and Diablo 2, and now he's working on this new game along with other huge name veterans of Diablo 1 and 2 like Eric Schaefer, Brian Fitzgerald, Pete Hu, Anthony Rivero. I mean, just important Diablo 2 people, basically, is the best way to say that. People who know what the fuck they're doing and how to make a good ARPG. So I have faith, I guess, that these people know what they're doing because they have a good track record. And honestly, like, of the games they've made, there's not a miss among them. So I don't know. It just seems a very drastic different approach to be able to play in a world that is voxel based. Your spells and attacks will actually damage the world permanently, to better or worse. Rhykker talks about how he was in this area where you could actually like break this cistern where there's water next to this area where there's lava, and just like Minecraft, the water goes across the lava, makes it walkable, traversable. So there's some really cool hidden stuff in the world that you can do with that. You can find rooms that are buried behind walls, climb up mountains, descend down caves. It's a very strange feel for an ARPG. It looks new. I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's such a different way to do things in this realm that I don't know how to feel about it. But there's potential for it to be really cool. I just know personally, I love Diablo because the story. And I feel like that's probably a weird thing to say because most people play Diablo, myself included, for years on end for gear grind and all of the end game content that we manufactured for ourselves out of Diablo 2 and all the rifts and builds that you can do in Diablo 3. And I don't know why people play Diablo 4 because I don't. But so for this one to be seemingly storyless is... I don't know how to feel about that. I could be completely off base and it could be the story is going to be completely separate. I just don't understand, much like Fallout 4, how you can make a big open world, in this case, open world that's voxel based and changes constantly, and then still tell a narrative through that. I guess Diablo 4 did that to better or lesser degree, but I don't know. I guess we'll see where it goes. The fact that it is hostable offline, though, meaning like you can have your game offline, download whatever, suggests that you should be able to mod the hell out of it. So theoretically, if you don't like something, you mod it, is the idea, which could be really cool for seeing what the community comes up with when this game comes out, what mods they come up with to change core aspects of the game that they don't like, or provide new content, maybe? I don't know. I mean, the sky's the limit if you're talking about a game that has ARPG aspects and a community of dedicated loyal fans behind it, which most ARPGs do. The only class that's been shown off so far has been the Witch. That's the only one that's been playable. Again, super early in development. It looks graphically dark aesthetic like Diablo 2, but I think Rhykker said it best. It looks like grim, like Brothers Grimm style of dark fantasy, not so much grim dark gothic horror that Diablo has been. So still dark, but more like whimsical dark, if that makes sense. Also breaking from the normal traditions of what ARPGs are, you can jump, double jump, dash, and swim in this ARPG. And dash has become a thing since, I don't know, Diablo 3, I guess, when it came to consoles. I think was the first one that introduced the dodge roll. I guess technically the Demon Hunter had that on PC to begin with as an ability, and then they gave it to everybody, kind of ruined that tree years ago. I'm sure they've changed that by now. There's a function to this game, though, where, as of right now, there's this thing called the Necropolis, which is a spreading plague-like thing that sweeps across the world. It's kind of one of your quote-unquote quests, is to stop this necropolis, which spans and basically eats away the land and terraforms your land. And you have to go and kill this lich, which, again, if anybody who's played Diablo 2, the lich's name is Narlathak. So, again, they're just doing all kinds of nods to Diablo in this game. Narlathak in Diablo 2, for those of you who don't know, is an NPC who turns out to betray you, and you go kill him. So he's also a necromancer. So lich, necromancer, yeah, kind of works. There's talks about having player buildings in the game in the future. I mean, there's a lot that they're doing with this that really breaks the traditional scope of what an ARPG is. And considering that it's by the people who kind of popularized and made ARPGs a thing in the first place, because I can't really remember an ARPG before Diablo. I'm pretty sure it was one of the first, if not the first. Either way, from the people that basically made it, laid the groundwork for what would become where we're at now, they are seemingly doing that again, for better or worse. And again, I'm a narrative guy, but gameplay in ARPGs is super important. Itemization is super important. A lot of it sounds really good. It's super grounded. It's all very relatable. I mean, you got socketable gems, things of that nature. They are doing like a monster drop socket kind of thing, where you will be able to occasionally get almost like runes, but they drop specifically from certain mobs, and it'd be like so-and-so's heart, demon heart thing, and it'll do X, but it's only going to drop from this monster. So it also kind of makes me think of Ragnarok, because in Ragnarok, you would farm a certain monster to get their card, which did a specific thing that you would put into a socket, right? So kind of somewhere between there is what it makes me think of. But the destructible environment is cool. Again, the footage is super raw, super early, so don't take anything, if Mike has anything to cut in here that isn't Rhykker's footage, which good luck, buddy. Don't take anything to heart, I guess, too much, because super early footage. I'm honestly surprised they let Rhykker and a couple other people, I think Llama CK or SC, something like that. He's another really well-known Diablo 2 guy. They got to play it and share their thoughts and shared some footage. I'm surprised that Moonbeast let them with how early it is in development, but I guess I want the community's thoughts on it, so we're giving it to them. The game will have waystones like pretty much every other ARPG since Diablo 2. And yeah, we really don't know a whole lot. I wouldn't expect a release date even in 2026 for this game. Maybe we'll see it by 2027, 2028, but who knows? I really don't have anything else on that, unfortunately. That's kind of where this topic kind of dies. There's just not a lot of news about it right now. It's all up in the air on what it's going to be. So it's something to watch for sure. There's a lot of the ARPGs that I've been wanting to play. I actually just got Darksiders Genesis, which they were doing a bundle after the THQ showcase, so I just bought all their Darksiders games with the announcement of 4. I'm super stoked to play that. So Genesis at some point I'll probably play. And yeah, that's what we got for Moonbeast's next game. So looking forward to that. We'll see what news comes out of it when we get more. Moving on. Last week we talked about Will Follow the Light, which I went on a bit of a rambling tangent about Robert Pattinson. I'm not going to try and say his name a million times because I think I said it right that time. Being in a movie with Willem Dafoe called The Lighthouse, and how that was based on a real-ish story of 3 lighthouse keepers who vanished off the coast of Scotland, yada yada yada. Well, the reason I bring that up is I came across another game, and we're just doing a sailing dinosaur kind of theme this month, guys. I don't know what to tell you. The Googles is feeding me what I find. So this is a game called The Lightkeeper. This is from Dark Phobia Games, who have published a couple other games, all of them smaller titles, in kind of the same vein. They're I don't want to say they're experiences because I haven't played them, so I don't know how long or how short they are. But they've made Graveyard Shift, which is kind of the same idea as what this Lightkeeper game is. You are guarding the Graveyard Shift. I'll just read the quote here for you. Guarding the Graveyard Shift is often considered one of the most terrifying jobs globally, but night guarding at Whispering Winds Cemetery surpasses any other cemetery in horror. Being night security in this place will turn into a nightmare for you that you may never forget. There's another one called Homeless that they make, which is about the horror that lurks in the subways at night beneath New York City. And I'm probably going to destroy this name, and I apologize. It's Aminetti, which is a story about a photographer who enters the Great Pyramids to photograph Pharaoh Radamon's remains. Again, I'm horrible, I'm sorry. But is soon overwhelmed by a sinister curse as the ancient tomb awakens dark forces. These are all relatively inexpensive games. They're all first person. They're all very visually impressive in terms of the surroundings, the environment. Looks very immersive. But they're all like $7, so I don't know how deep the games are, how far they go, that kind of thing. But the one we're talking about tonight is their newest one. Currently doesn't have a release date, called The Lightkeeper, which you are alone on a remote island tasked with keeping a lighthouse. But a horrific event that claimed the lives of the previous keeper still whispers through the air. Each day, the line between reality and delusion fades, and something in the dark is waiting for the last keeper. Now, they don't specifically say that this is based off of, again, that story I was talking to you about, but it sure as hell seems like it, because that was 3 lighthouse keepers who mysteriously vanished. No reason, no knowledge. And it just kind of feels like a follow-up. I feel like they named it Lightkeeper because they couldn't call it the Lighthouse because it was too similar to the movie with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. But the premise is in 1925, during his first experience in this line of work, Arthur is sent to a remote island due to a shortage of personnel. He must perform his duties alone. That right there is pretty wild. Because generally speaking, lighthouse keepers were never alone. So already sets you up for just isolation and probably some psychological craziness, but should be cool. At first, everything seems normal, but time passes. The situation quickly deteriorates with the horrifying truth behind the death, with the horrifying truths behind the deaths of previous keepers coming to light. Every passing moment on the island becomes a nightmarish ordeal for Arthur. His traumatic past and fragile mental state only worsen his condition in the isolation, eerie environments. It seems, I don't know. I don't want to say low budget, but definitely like it's an indie game. It's definitely meant to feel an aesthetic horror. It feels like a walking sim. I don't want to say it is, but that's kind of the vibe that I get. At the same time, there's really nothing wrong with that. PT showed us that sometimes the most terrifying games are just walking through an environment. So, yeah, that's The Lighthouse. Keep an eye on it. Seems kind of cool. The game is designed to fully immerse you in the role of a lighthouse keeper. You will have an open world island to explore, which is not very large, but your primary responsibilities remains tend to the lighthouse. You must manage essential tasks such as lighting and extinguishing the beacon at the right times and maintaining resources like oil and fuel. As you progress, you will uncover the dark and terrifying secrets hidden through the island. To deepen the emotional connection with Arthur and the story, high-quality cinematic cutscenes are integrated into the experience. So, it seems like it's mostly a walking, go here, do this, do that kind of game, but there's not really anything wrong with that, I guess. Not per se. So, it's interesting. I want to check out some of their other works to get a feel of what this game might be like. But if you like cinematic horror games, maybe check them out. Again, that's Dark Phobia Games, and you can get them on Steam. The Lightkeeper does not currently have a release date, but it's got a Steam page, so check it out. Moving on, there was a recent leak for Diablo 4, and a probably newbie dev learned a lesson the worst way possible for him. I hope Blizzard doesn't go too hard on him, but basically there was some patch notes for a recent update for Diablo 4, and a specific file was found in those patch notes that suggests that the next class to come to Diablo 4 might be the Paladin, which we have not seen since Diablo 2. So that's pretty cool. I personally was not big on Paladins in Diablo 2, but Hammerdins were kind of like the main build. Everybody loved them. Or Aura builds were super support. They were a really cool character. They had a lot of capabilities, but I was primarily a Necromancer or Barbarian player. Those were my jams. But I'd be interested to see how a Paladin works in Diablo 4. What they do to rework the class, to modernize them, make them, intriguing in a new way. I know there was a lot of talk for a long time when they were doing the Mephisto expansion for Diablo 4, which I still haven't played, that they were going to bring Paladins back then because you were dealing with the Zakarum, which are the priests and the religion that the Paladins in Diablo lore follow. So there was a lot of talk about like, oh, are they going to end? They ended up with this weird jungle spirit build thing, which I'm not sure what that is. I haven't heard whether it's good or bad. I haven't gone back and played it. I haven't bought the expansion, so I really can't say. I just know it was not what the fans expected. And I don't know if it was to better or worse, but Blizzard not doing what the fans expect is pretty par for the course. If you forgot the whole "what you guys don't have phones" comment when they released Diablo Immortal. So it suggests that their next class will be the Paladin. Pretty cool. Ubisoft says they have not forgotten that Assassin's Creed started as a philosophical journey in the differences between freedom through control and freedom through knowledge, and have said that they have not moved away from Templar, even though Templar have not been a part of their game for a really long time now. I'm not going to try and calculate exactly how long, but they seem to think that they haven't forgotten that that's a thing, and there's going to be Templar. They also said that they recently did a crossover with Critical Role that is lore accurate and world accurate for Assassin's Creed Shadows. So why? I genuinely do not understand some of these companies. They just make really weird decisions. Why would you do a crossover with a tabletop role-playing group for a video game that has nothing to do with that type of role-playing? I just blown away by that decision. And the fact that it's lore accurate for the world of Assassin's Creed Shadows is something else. They went on, a dev at Assassin's Creed Shadows went on to say that, quote, "The Assassins vs. Templar conflict has always been a core pillar of Assassin's Creed." Yeah, it used to be when Jade Raymond ran the show and was interested in selling a philosophical game about, the difference between how you get to the end goal that is the same, how you can achieve peace through control or achieve peace through knowledge, through chaos. I miss the philosophy of Assassin's Creed. That's what I really loved about the game. Continuing the quote here. "With Shadows, we wanted to properly set our protagonist in the set." Fucking Christ. Wanted to properly set our protagonist in the setting before expanding on the Assassins vs. Templars. So that seems to suggest that maybe we'll see another Assassin's Creed Shadows game, at the very least DLC. And please God, no. Because that tells me you haven't learned your lesson. I'm pretty sure Assassin's Creed Shadows failed, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't think they made the money they spent putting it together, but what do I know? Continuing. Now that it's done on the main story, now that it's done on the main game, we scratch the surface with the Critical Role story drop. Again, I'm blown away that they did. Stupid. And you can expect more deep dive into the conflict in the near future. Can we? Yeah. I just... Jade Raymond, can you please, if you're watching, go slap someone for destroying your incredible philosophical journey? I mean, just decimated. I just... It's weird that in the last 5 years, to be fair, Assassin's Creed's been dead to me for a long time, but it's weird that in the last 5 years, for sure, that not only has Assassin's Creed been killed, which was one of my favorite franchises for a very long time, but Dragon Age is also dead. And it's just weird to be moving forward from those franchises. It's happened before. It's not like this is the first time that I've ever experienced this. Soul Reaver was another great franchise that I had to move forward from. Tenchu, as anybody who's a long-term fan of the show will know, I've mentioned numerous times. There's franchises, they just fade off in time, right? But it's weird now in the modern age where we have Call of Duty 47,003 times 2 coming out, because franchises don't die anymore. It doesn't seem like it anyways. But I guess the ones that have mass appeal don't, is really the story here. But I don't have a lot of hope left for Assassin's Creed. I don't think they have anything left in the tank for making it just a coherent story at this point. They're They're just the new Call of Duty. They're open world, historically fiction game in X setting for any given year. They don't have any real substance to them anymore for me. They haven't for a long time, but teaming up with Critical Role to do a story drop is just, what the fuck? CRPG players are who you're targeting with that. People who like deep, story-rich, player-driven content. And you do an Assassin's Creed crossover. I gotta move on. But speaking of Dragon Age, we recently have been getting a lot of interviews with people from the old team in the wake of the disastrous Veilguard. And something came to light from Mark Dura, who was the franchise executive producer before Veilguard. So he was the executive producer on Dragon Age Origins, I believe 2 and Inquisition as well. If not, I think he was there during that time. Regardless, he actually came out and said that Dragon Age was never supposed to be a franchise. Origins was supposed to be a one and done. There was no thought to making more to that. And when it was an instant hit, EA went, "You're making another one, right?" And they're like, "I guess so." So that's part of why 2 was so disconnected from 1, is BioWare realized they had all these threads out there with Dragon Age Origins because of all the different ways that story could go. I mean, that game was... There was a lot. There was a lot to that game that allowed you to really experience and shape the world. Baldur's Gate 3 has a ton of choices in it and a ton of player agency. Before that, Dragon Age Origins was the go-to for like real CRPG level, getting deep into the narrative, making you feel like you're your character story. I mean, obviously the game plays through the same path as does Baldur's Gate, but like your level of interaction and development in the story of Dragon Ages was unparalleled at the time. So he went on to say that, quote, "Dragon Age Origins originally was intended as a standalone game. You can see this if you play Dragon Age Origins knowing that it was intended to be a standalone." Makes sense. There's a lot of the threads that are cast out there that kind of had to be abandoned because there could be werewolves all over the world. There might be a civil war happening in Orzammar. I mean, there was a ton of stuff that they opened up for possibilities for the player to interact with, to do. And so they had to abandon a lot of that. And when they made Dragon Age 2, they narrowed the scope, which is why you end up playing as Hawk and you affect things not on a global scale the way you did with Dragon Age Origins, but on a very localized scale that still kind of impacted the world moving forward. But like the actual game impact all took place in one city, in one region, and one very small area of the world. Unlike the first game, which is across the entire continent across the entire country of Ferelden, which is on Thetis, that whole thing. When they made Dragon Age Inquisition, you would think they would have learned from that mistake, from making these big sweeping narratives and these world-changing choices that you get to make. Well, you would think that, but what ended up happening is they wanted to make the story carry over, so we had Dragon Age Keep, right? And it diluted those first 2 games down. If you basically... Dragon Age Keep was basically an import version because we moved generations, right? So we went from PS3 and Xbox 360 to the PS4 generation. Inquisition came out on the border of PS3 and PS4 and, Xbox 360 and Xbox One, right? Fucking their generations are stupid. So you could import your save by connecting to your EA account, loading it into the Dragon Age Keep, and then it would generate a new file for you to push to your new Dragon Age Inquisition game. If you didn't do that, you could go in and select presets and then choose like 200 different choices that you would have made across those two games, which were, I mean, like, if you really wanted to go in there and spend some time, and I believe the website's still up, fucking hope so, because Inquisition's still a really good game if you haven't played it. It's awesome. But you could go in there and spend hours building your choices and then, like, watch a narrative-driven cutscene where Varric kind of narrates how your story went from Origins all the way through 2 and all the DLCs, everything in between. Very cool. So they added that, and they put that in for Inquisition, but then they continued to have you make massive world-changing choices in Inquisition. And so they kind of doomed themselves from the very get-go with any game after Inquisition. Because at the point when you start Inquisition, 200 different choices with at least 2 options, either A or B, right? At least. And with Dragon Age Origins, most situations had 4 or 5 options. There were very few that had only 2. So you had multiple paths. Now you're importing that into Inquisition, where you have even more paths that sweep and affect the world, to the point where, like, do you dissolve the Inquisition? Because that is a huge repercussion or not repercussion based on how that whole plays out at the end of the game. They set it up in a way that, like, you guys should have learned that you can't do this if you're going to continue to make sequels, but they didn't. And they continued to make these massive changes that they basically screwed Veilguard. It didn't matter what they tried to do with Veilguard. At this point, it was so, I hate the word, but it's the most apt here. It was so bespoke. Your Thetis was so bespoke and so unique to how you wanted it to be. There would have been no feasible way to deliver on tying up all of those threads. Like, the amount of dialogue alone they would have had to have recorded would have just dwarfed Baldur's Gate 3. I just wouldn't, like, not even. You could, in Dragon Age Origins, you could choose to not break a curse that was turning elves into werewolves in Ferelden, and aligned yourself with the werewolves to destroy the Dalish clans of Ferelden, which would have effectively wiped the Dalish off the map. You could choose to sacrifice dwarves to turn them into golems to use as an army, which would have decimated the population of Orzammar. You could have chosen to incite a riot and have civil war in Orzammar between these two warring leading factions. You could choose to find these sacred ashes, which worked as kind of a holy grail to restore life. You could have chosen to find that and keep it secret. Like, there were so many globally impacting decisions you could have made that there's no way they could have made a 4th game that would have been what we wanted. And that's a weird realization. That's fucking wild. But as I was reading through this interview with Mark Dura, I had that realization that, like, Dragon Age Veilguard was doomed before Inquisition came out. It was doomed after Origins. It really was. There was no way that they were going to carry forward all the choices from 1 into 2, which is why 2 doesn't intersect with 1 at all, with Origins at all, and why none of them really intersect with each other. They just carry over certain choices to add some dialogue, some flair, some flavor. But Veilguard could have never been the Dragon Age we wanted it to be. Not from EA. Maybe BioWare given enough time, but going on with this interview, EA loved the success they had from BioWare's Dragon Age, but they did not understand it. And I think it's important to think about the time in which Dragon Age Origins came out. Dragon Age Origins came out in, like, 2009, I want to say. When was it? Because I know it was before I left for the military by a good couple of years. Yeah, 2009. All right, so I need you to put your shoes, put your feet in the shoes of 2009 and think, what games did EA publish in 2009? And I'm going to tell you, it's mostly sports games and The Sims. EA used to be primarily a video game sports company. EA Sports. It's in the game, right? Like, we've all heard that. Everybody's heard that. If you were alive in the early 2000s, you played an EA Sports game. They loved the success that Dragon Age brought them. They loved the success that Mass Effect brought them. But they didn't understand it at all. They just genuinely didn't. So they didn't know how to push the franchise forward, how to make it into a franchise, how to make a fantasy game popular. They didn't have that experience. They didn't know what they were doing, so they couldn't support BioWare. Going back to Mark Dura, he says, quote, the problem that Dragon Age has had, charitably, I guess, is that EA wants mainstream success. Ain't that the fucking truth? Them and Activision both. All they want is numbers. All they care about is numbers. All they care about is mass appeal. We saw that with Veilguard. We saw how bad a mass appeal game becomes when it's a niche market, right? Like, fantasy is not a mass appeal genre. It's more massively appealed now, but like 2009, CRPG, not a big thing back then. And it's hard, or at least it has historically been hard, for corporate people who come from the sports side of the organization, to look at a game like Dragon Age Origins, which is super nerdy, not very attractive looking, and say, oh, this is a mainstream game. They don't see it. That is publishing in a nutshell, I feel like. Like, that is everything that's wrong with this industry in a nutshell. And this is 2009 this guy's talking about. They didn't get it then. And I think that was just about the start where gaming started to become the largest media format, like the largest medium. EA didn't understand it then, and we're in 2025, where publishers and where people are funding games not because they love games, but because they want money. And they didn't get it then, which, man, if that doesn't ripple through time and tell you how bad things are now and how bad they were then, that I just... people get into this business for the wrong reasons, and it sucks. That's what I'm getting at. Mark goes on to say, the version of BioWare that made Origins didn't know Dragon Age was going to be a whole thing. It wasn't making future plans, and it wasn't trying to support a brand by bringing in players who don't like nerdy CRPGs. Yeah. I remember people looking at me weird when I said, oh yeah, I play Dragon Age. And people were like, you don't play God of War or like Call of Duty? I'm like, no, Dragon Age. What's wrong with you? The game's great. I remember going to the midnight release for God of War because I reserved Dragon Age Origins Awakening, which also came out the same night. And I went to the midnight release, and the guy's like, you here for God of War? I'm like, no, Dragon Age. He's like, what? That game came out already. He's like, yeah, the expansion came out too. You got him in the back. And he's like, what? It literally blew his mind because everybody that was there in line was talking about how stoked they were for God of War 3. And I'm just sitting there by myself, just like, yeah, God of War's cool. I want Dragon Age. So, I don't know. It's just very funny to me that BioWare didn't even expect it to have a hit, but they made RPGs. Like, they made KOTOR. They made one of the greatest Star Wars games of all time, if not the greatest Star Wars game of all time. So, for them to say that they didn't understand that they had a hit is a little almost heartbreaking, because you can really see the KOTOR DNA in Dragon Age Origins. So, moving on here, and so he says, and that's how we got one of the best and richest RPGs ever made. The BioWare today, I'm sorry, this isn't Mark. This is actually the writer of the article I read. So I'm going to start this quote over because I forgot I copied this because I liked the way this guy closed out his article. Very well written. So I'm going to start this over. So this is from the writer of the article. It says, the version of BioWare that made Dragon Age Origins didn't know Dragon Age was going to be a whole thing. It wasn't making future plans, and it wasn't trying to support a brand and bring in players who don't like nerdy CRPGs. And that's how we got one of the richest RPGs ever made. Cannot agree more. The BioWare of today, meanwhile, is more firmly entrenched in EA's corporate culture, encouraging a simpler people pleaser. And that's how we end up with an RPG that feels like a series death cry. I just, that closing statement from him, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. EA put people on the BioWare team that are worried about mass appeal, that wanted to make a game that's inclusive to everyone, of all cultures, of all faiths, of all beliefs, of everything. They wanted mass appeal. And CRPGs are not mass appeal games. RPGs are not mass appeal games. It's really funny to me because we literally a couple weeks ago talked about how Focus Interactive, CEO of Focus Interactive, was blown away by the success of Space Marine 2. Millions it's sold. Millions. And it's a niche title. If you can't seem to understand that mass appeal doesn't work in this in this medium, that like, yeah, your Call of Duties are going to succeed, your FIFAs are going to succeed, but you do not take niche media and make it mass appeal. It will not succeed. The reason Space Marine 2 succeeded as hard as it did is because it's so dedicated to the core of what Warhammer 40K is, that every fan of Warhammer 40K stood up and went, I'm buying that. And it is a fantastic game. The core of what made Dragon Age so good was that it was nerdy. It was deep and thick with story and choices. And what do you know? Baldur's Gate 3 walked in its shadow and said, hold my fucking beer. Look at how good this shit can be. And then we get Veilguard. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about EA and the culture of EA's corporate, everything has to fit everyone everywhere, it doesn't work. Not in this genre. I really hope they figure that out at some point. But that's what I've got for you with Dragon Age. Sorry, that's quickfire news is probably actually at this point longer than the actual topics we talked about. But I saw that article and man, it just resonated with me. It just, yeah, it's a good one. It was a good read. So last bit of news I have for you guys tonight. There is a VR mod coming for PC players of Ready or Not, a game that I have wanted to play for a very long time. It's a SWAT tactical based game. Looks like a lot of fun. There is a VR mod coming that has been signed off on by the developers. They said, GG's boy, post that shit. I don't know if that's their actual words, but either way, very cool that they have given it their blessing and said, you know, hey, do it. So that is going to be episode 111 for us tonight. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope it was enjoyable. I get so very little feedback from anybody on these episodes. I don't even know if anybody's listening. If you are, leave us a review on Spotify, iCloud, Tunes, whatever podcastery you're using. Give us a thumbs up. Run over to youtube.com/CoinDropVods. Tell us what you liked. Tell us if you think we suck. I suck. I don't care. Tell me something. Let me know somebody's out there listening. So thanks again, guys. I'm going to head over to Patreon and we'll see you next week. Oh, and fuck Nintendo. And just because Mike's not here, fuck Ubisoft too. And you know what? Fuck EA. Have a great night, everyone.